I've been asked to speak on the Upanishads. Now, most of you, of course, must be familiar with many things which I am going to tell you right now, because Upanishad classes have been going on here for quite a long time. So many of what I am going to tell you may be already familiar to you. But still, just a few things by way of introduction. Vedas constitute the very essence and the very foundation and the very source of India's spiritual and philosophical tradition. And this Veda, there are, all of you know, 4 Vedas: Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sama Veda, and Atharva Veda. And of these Vedas, the Upanishads constitutes the essence, the foundation, or rather the final word, because Vedanta is another term by which we call Upanishads. Vedasya antaha. The anta could mean the final word and also the essence. So, Upanishads in a way constitute the very essence, the very foundation, the very source of India's spiritual, philosophical, and cultural traditions. So, in India, in Indian cultural tradition, if there is any conflict, any difference of views and opinions with regard to certain ideas, certain practices, certain conventions and traditions, we always listen to what the Upanishads have to tell us. The view of Upanishads is upheld as the fundamental, the final authority with regard to all questions related to culture, practices, and also philosophical discussions. The second in importance comes Smritis. Smritis, in a way, can be called something like the constitution, codification of conventions and traditions prevailing in society from time to time. They are not eternal values, they are relative values. And the third in importance is the Puranas. So, according to some of the ancient sages, Sudhi Smriti Purananam Virodho Yatra Drishyade Tatra Sraudam Pramanam Syat Tayor Dvaithe Smritirvara. I shall quote a few things from the original Sanskrit books and then I shall translate. Now, whenever there is any conflict with regard to conventions and traditions of philosophical ideas, what the Upanishads tell us is the final word, is the fundamental, the final authority. The second in importance comes the views of the Smritis, and the third is the view, is the attitude of the place of Puranas. So, what I mean to say, the Upanishads in a way constitute the very foundation of India's spiritual and cultural tradition. Now, what are the fundamental teachings of the Upanishads? Upanishads fundamentally, in a way, explain what we are, what is the true nature of our real personality. And it comes to the conclusion that we are by our very nature omniscient, immanent, transcendent, and omnipresent. So omnipresence or omniscience, transcendence, and immanence. These are the 4 characteristics by which we can explain the real self that we are. Now, I use the word explain. The Upanishads tell us that this reality, this Atman, this self can never be explained. It is beyond words. It is beyond description and definitions. But then all the Upanishads, all the Vedas, all the scriptures are only attempts to explain what is beyond explanation. So, the Upanishads themselves say Veda, Aveda, Bhavanti, Grantha, Grantha, Bhavanti, etc. When the truth is realized, we realize the fact that truth can only be experienced, and the language of experience is silence. And silence is the language by which we try to explain, we cannot explain, but try to explain what is beyond explanation, experience. And in reality, we are the Atman, which is the immanent reality within every living creature in this world. Swami Vivekananda explains the ethical dimension of this idea in practical Vedanta. He says the infinite oneness of the soul is the eternal sanction of all morality, all ethics, and all good actions. And he goes on explaining, why shouldn't we hate our neighbor? Not because the police will catch us, but because by hurting our neighbor, we are hurting ourselves. Because we are non-different, non-distinct from our neighbor. So this oneness of creation, oneness of existence, based on the fact of the immanence of this Atman, this self, this infinite self, this is the central theme of all the Upanishads. And then the Upanishads tell us that this immanent reality which is present, which is the indweller in every living being in this world, is also the transcendental reality, that which goes beyond everything. And it is also the omnipresent reality. The Atman which is residing in every living being in this world is also the source of this universe. And this Atman is also behind the existence of this universe. And this Atman also is the point of dissolution of the universe. I can explain this in the light of a simple story in the Taittiriya Upanishad. In Taittiriya Upanishad, there is an interesting dialogue between a son and his father. The father's name is Varuna, and the son's name is Bhrigu. So the mantra start like this: Bhrigu vai varunihi varunam pitaram upasasara adhihi bhagavo brahmedi annam pranam chakshu srotram mano vachamiti etova imani bhudani jayante yena jatani jivanti yet prayanti abhisamvisanti tad vidijñāsasva tad brahma. I shall explain in English, of course. So this boy one day goes to his father and he asks him, please teach me about the Upanishads. Please teach me about the fundamental theme, the basic structure or the true nature of our real personality. Adhiki bhagavo brahmeti. What is Brahman? Means Brahman, the source of the universe, and which is also the immanent reality residing in all living beings. Then the father told him, look here, look at this sky, these mountains, these rivers, the valleys. Annam, pranam, chakshusrotra, manovacham. Annam means the material universe, the empirical, the phenomenal universe. And all the phenomenal entities, empirical phenomena. Look at them. Where do they come from? What is behind their existence? And what happens to them when they die out, when they vanish from our eyes? You try to find out that. Then you will know you will know the source of creation. So tapasa brahma vidijñāsasva. Now, how do we seek into the true nature of this empirical phenomena? Not by analyzing, not with the help of modern science and technology. Where in modern science and technology, we take every little bit of things one after another and try to understand the secret behind. We are not trying to find out an interconnecting link, something which unifies the entire creation. Rather, we are trying to analyze every bit of information in a very disconnected way. We are not going in search of a fundamental unifying principle. And to understand the fundamental unifying principle, we have to turn the inquiry inward. So the father tells him tapasa means through tapa. Tapa means actually introspection, meditation, turning the inquiry inward. That is called in Sanskrit language tapa. So through this inward introspection and meditation, you try to understand the origin or the source of the universe, and try to understand the power that maintains the universe and the point of dissolution, all the natural phenomena. And the boy started meditating, and after long meditation he thought, well, I have discovered the fundamental truth. It is matter that is the source of everything in this world. It is matter that maintains the universe, and it is matter which ultimately which is the point of dissolution of the universe. And the father said, you are wrong, you continue your meditation. And the boy continued, and at the next stage he found vital energy. Father corrected him, no, you have not reached the final truth. You have to continue your meditation, your introspection, your inquiry. At the third stage, the boy thought, well, I have discovered mind, because after all, everything comes in mind. Our thought originates in mind. So then also father said, you are wrong, you have to continue your inquiry. And at the fourth stage, the boy, well, he came back to his father, said, Vijnanat imani bhudani jayante, vijnanena jatani jivanti, vijnanam prayanti abhisambhishanti. Intellect. We come to know of something, of its existence. We come to know the existence of something when we know of it. Unless we intellectually perceive something, we won't know that it exists. So intellect is the source of creation. And intellect is what maintains creation. Then also father corrected him. And at the fifth stage, he came back and he didn't say anything, because he discovered the truth. And that blissfulness of experiencing the essence of everything in this world was visible on his face. That anandam, ananda imani bhudani jayante, means blissfulness, satchit ananda, infinite existence, infinite knowledge and infinite bliss. And this experience can only be experienced, it can never be intellectually perceived or explained or defined. Now, this is the essence of Upanishad. So, as we spiritually evolve and go to higher and higher levels of spiritual evolution, we leave behind the lower cognitions. As I said, there is a sloka in the Mahabharata, Prathama Padima Puja Japastotrani Madhyama Uttama Dhyana Bhavasya Soham Bhava Uttama. You see, a beginner in spiritual journey thinks that God is living in a temple, in a church, or in a masjid, or in a synagogue, any place of worship. Well, that is correct. Upanishads fully agree with that point. But Upanishads tell us that there is something beyond this. This is true, but this is not the whole picture of the absolute reality. And as we go further and further, we realize that God is omnipresent. And finally, we realize that there is nothing in this world other than God. As Sri Ramakrishna said, God is the only reality. Whatever we see in this world, experience this world, is nothing but God in different forms. So, Sarvam Khalu Idam Brahma. This is one approach of the Upanishads. Whatever you see in this world is nothing but not an expression of the infinite reality. Now, this is the central teaching of Upanishads. Now, this idea is explained in so many different ways in different Upanishads. I can again give a very interesting dialogue in the form of a story that's found in the Kathopanishad. It comes in the Yajurveda tradition, the Krishna Yajurveda tradition. In Kathopanishad, there is a dialogue, and there is an interesting story of a small boy who goes in search of the fundamental teachings of Upanishads, which is called Brahma Vidya in the Kathopanishad tradition. So, the name of the boy is Nachiketa, 6-year-old boy. And his father, his name is Vajrasava. His father was a very shrewd, worldly minded person. And one day he was performing a big ritual. In ancient times, around 3000, 4000 BC, there used to be a tradition in India, that is, of performing Vedic rituals. And part of this ritual was giving away whatever the householder possessed. So whatever you possess, you have to give away. This was the part of the religious ritual. So in those days, cows were the main currency. Cow, that was the main currency. So a father, a very shrewd man, maybe very slight, cunning businessman, he wanted to get a good name for philanthropy. At the same time, he didn't want to lose anything. So he collected all the old cows which can't give milk, which will be of no use to anybody who receives those. So, Pitodaka, Jagdadrina, Dugdaduha, Nirintriya, these are the words which the Upanishad uses to describe the type of cows which this gentleman was trying to give away as a gift. So he wanted to get a good name for philanthropy, for his charity. At the same time, he didn't want to lose anything. So, but the boy was of a different nature. So he was carefully watching the way the father was giving away these old, battered cows, which would be rather be a burden to those who received them. So he asked, in fact, he wanted to teach his father a good lesson. Now, in ancient India, during the Vedic times, a son was the most important property of a father, because it is through son that the lineage is maintained. The tradition of the family could be maintained only by the son. So Nachiketa went to his father. He asked him, whom are you going to give me? Who is going to receive me? Because you have to give away me also. I am your most precious thing. You are giving away this cow, but I am the most precious wealth of yours. I am your most precious wealth because I am your eldest son, only son he had. Then, and 2-3 times, Dutiyam Tridiyam Sahovacha, the Upanishad tells us, 2-3 times this boy repeated this question. Then father got angry. When a big ritual was going on, suddenly a 6-year-old boy coming and disturbing, creating problems. He said, well, I'm going to give you to the Lord of Death. Now, the son was a very intelligent and man of, though a small boy, he had a very high level of integrity, mental integrity, what we call Shraddha. So he took the father's words literally, and next day he started his journey to the house of the Lord of Death. Yama, it's called Yama, that's the name of the Lord of Death. And he reached Yama's house. Yama had gone out, and he returned only on the 3rd day. So there he found a small boy who was waiting for him without eating anything, without drinking anything, because he was fasting all the 3 days. He refused to take food during the 3 days when he was waiting for the Yama's return. So, well, I'm sorry that you waited for me without food. And now, as a compensation, I would grant you 3 boons. You can ask me 3 boons. Whatever you want, I can give you. Now, Nachiketa, the young boy, asked for 3 boons. These 3 boons represent 3 levels of human civilization. The first boon that he asked for is very simple. Well, when I go back to my home, my father should not get angry with me, because he had left his home without father's permission, and father would be searching everywhere. So he said, well, when I get back to my home, my father should not be angry with me, and he should speak very happily with me. Shanta sankalpa sumana yatha syad vida manyun gautamuma abhimurtyo Tat prasishtam ma abhivadet prasida edatrayanam prathamam varam vrani. The first boon I am asking for is this. When I get back to my home, my father should speak to me very peacefully and very gracefully, and he should not get angry with me. A 6-year boy, see, my father should not beat me because I left my home without his permission. Like that. So Yama readily granted that boon. It doesn't cost him much. Any child will ask for that boon only. Well, but Nachiketa was not an ordinary boy. In fact, this story occurs in 2-3 other Brahmanas also, with slight different versions, So then Yama said, all right, now you ask for the next boon. Then the boy thought, well, now my worldly prosperity is guaranteed. And my longevity also guaranteed, because I could see Yama, the Lord of Death, face to face. So naturally, Yama would certainly grant me long life and prosperity, everything. But long life, prosperity, status, money, wealth, everything is all right. But they won't last for long. Even if you have got plenty of billions of dollars in Swiss bank or anywhere, a day will come when you won't be able to enjoy any of that. All these things will vanish one day. There is something beyond this. But he had heard of celestial beings, gods living in heaven. They live for a much longer period, and they can enjoy physical comforts, material wealth for a much longer period. So he asked for a long life in heaven, not in this world. In this world, his prosperity is guaranteed. Nothing more to ask for. So I want to go to heaven, and there I want to continue my happy life. So sattvam agnim swargyam adhesh mrityu prabruhidam saddadhanaya mahyam swargaloka amrudatvam bhajanti edat trayanam ditiyam varam prane. This is the second boon that I am going to ask you. Please teach me that religious ritual which will enable me to go to heaven after death, so I can live there peacefully, happily for a very long time. Yama, of course, readily granted the second boon also, because Yama understood these things won't last for long. Man may live for 100 years in this world, leading a very happy, prosperous life with high status, position, everything. And he may live maybe for 1 billion years in heaven, that's all. But not beyond that. Beyond a particular period, you can't live in heaven. You have to come down and be born as a human being again, and continue this cycle of life, action, death, rebirth, and the whole game of human evolution, this cyclic existence in which Vedanta believes. It will continue. So Nachiketa thought for a long time. Then he felt, well, even this heavenly pleasure also won't last for long. There should be something beyond that. And he had heard from other scholars during the conversations taking place in his home, and maybe he must have already got some idea of the ultimate spiritual enlightenment, realization. So he is asking for third boon. Yeyam prete vijigitsa manushe asti tige nayam asti dichaiki edad vidyam anusishtastvayaham varana mesha varastritiyaha. This is the third boon that I am asking for. He says, well, some people say when this body dies, that's the end of the journey. Nothing beyond that. Nothing is left out. And according to some other people, there is something still which continues to exist even after this body is gone. So Nachiketa is asking for an explanation of the mystery of death. And mystery of death is the same as the mystery of life. Because human life is nothing but a steady, gradual preparation for an intelligent way of living in this world, which is called death. So when this boon was asked, Yama was not much pleased. he was willing to teach Nachiketa. But he knew very well that one should be a fit disciple to be able to understand, even intellectually understand, the meaning of the mystery of death. Because mystery of death is the same as mystery of life. And once we understand the transitory nature of this world, the phenomenal world, the empirical life, then we also understand what lies beyond it. That's why many of you, at least some of you, must be familiar with the famous Purana. It's called Bhagavata Purana, the most important of the Puranas. In fact, the entire Bhagavata Purana, which is the most sacred Purana for the followers of Vaishnava tradition, is nothing but a response to a question asked by a king who had only 7 days to live. The name of the king was Parikshit. And the king, in fact, he had committed a mischief. He put a dead snake in the neck of a great sage who was meditating, and as a result of this evil deed, it was ordained that he will die on the 7th day. He will be beaten by a snake. Takshaka, it's a mythological story, but there is a story behind the story. The story has got a tremendous and intense message for even our own times. So this king realized that he had only 7 days to live. And when he realized, he left his kingdom, he left his palace, and he reached the banks of the holy river Ganga, Ganges. And when other saints and sages came to know of this great sacrifice of this mighty emperor, Parikshit, who had renounced his kingdom and comforts, everything, as a penance for a bad action that he committed. I mean, putting a dead snake in the neck of a great saint. He realized, well, this is going to be my fate, and I deserve this punishment for the evil deed which I did. So he came to the banks of the Ganga with all his retinue, ministers. And when other saints and sages and wise men of those days came to know of this incident, they also came. They wanted to see the king. They wanted to talk to him. They wanted to comfort him. They wanted to make him ready for accepting death with a smile on his face. So of these great saints, among them, there was the greatest sage of those days. His name was Shuka Brahmashi. So when Shuka also appeared, then Parikshit, the king Parikshit, asked a question to Shuka. Atha prichami samsiddhim yoginam paramam gurum purushasyeha yat karyam mriyamanasya sarvatha. Now, saint, I am going to ask you one question. You are yoginam gurum, you are the teacher of yogis. See, mriyamanasya means somebody who is going to die, somebody whom death is staring on his face. What should a dying man do? A man who is preparing for death, what should he do? Generally, when people come to know of death, imminent death, they become perturbed. They become mentally disturbed. It is said that a very obvious man with 300 pounds, only bulging muscles and no energy, suffering from high diabetics, he went to a physician, a traditional indigenous physician. And the physician told him, you will live only for 3 days, it said. This fellow won't do any work, he won't walk, he won't take a long walk. He was such a lazy man, 300 pounds, suffering from high diabetics. So it is said that within 3 days, this fellow's weight came down because he was so much perturbed, so much disturbed by the imminent death that is coming to him. So death is always a terrible crisis for any ordinary human being. So this king put this question to this saint, and the saint answered. Now, Etavan Sankhya Yoga Abhyam Swadharma Parinishthaya Janma Labha Parapumsam Ante Narayana Smriti. This is the answer. This, in fact, the entire Bhagavata Purana is nothing but an expansion of this idea. By any means, either by performing selfless duties and responsibilities, either through meditation or prayer, or introspection, or just by leading a pious life, helping others, either through devotion, through yogic meditation, or through philosophical analysis, one should be able to remember God when his breathing is last. So, Ante Narayana Smriti. Ante means at the last moment one should be able to remember God. This is the supreme goal of human life. So, Nachiketa had already become familiar with these ideas. These ideas you find the Yajurveda Brahmana and all. So, Nachiketa asked Yama, I want to know what exactly happens to me or to anybody when death comes. Then Yama tried to test him whether this boy is a fit recipient, a fit student to know the mystery of death. And when he found that Nachiketa was very resourceful, very serious, and very earnest, then Yama teaches him the supreme truth, the Brahma Vidya, in the Kathopanishad. So, the whole human life is nothing but a journey. This body is just a vehicle, a carriage, and we are just travelers. If we can control our senses, if we can purify our mind, if we can keep ourselves busy in doing good deeds, by accumulating good impressions in mind, by leading a pious life, by combining spiritual wisdom and values of intelligent life in this world, then we can practice this Brahma Vidya. In modern times, we can say one should be able to live in this world, one can pursue the path of material comforts, material prosperity, but at the same time, one should not become a slave of material prosperity. Sri Ramakrishna says in his own unique language, he says, you live in this world, but don't belong to this world. Don't be of this world, but live in this world. So if one could live in this world without being worldly minded, one can live in this world as a master and not as a slave. The point is, even if we don't realize the truth that material prosperity and all that comes in its track, even if we don't realize that they are transitory, still they will perish one day. So the Upanishads ultimately give us a central message, I mean the message of harmonious life. Live in this world, but don't be part of this world. If we can remember that we are the immanent reality, the transcendental reality, that eternal truth, which is the undying, imperishable reality, and still we have to live in this world, we have to work with our hands and intellect and mind, then we can live in this world as a master, not as a slave. This idea is put in a more simple language in Bhagavad Gita. It says, Ishvara sarvabhudanam hridesi arjuna tishtadi brahmayan sarvabhudani yantra ruthanimaya. These ideas, the central message of the Upanishads is put in different styles, in different contexts in the Gita, in the Mahabharata, and in all other scriptures. Now, coming back to Upanishads, another very interesting aspect of the Upanishad message is that it is universal. The Upanishads, in a way, do not belong to any particular religion. According to Upanishads, the reality that we pursue, the reality that we understand, or the way we understand the reality, very much depends upon our own spiritual evolution. A primitive man, as I said earlier, will think that this particular path along is correct, and this particular way of worship is the only way to worship God, or this particular set of doctrines and scriptures and theological ideas is alone true. But Upanishads tell us that the fundamental truth is universal, and though the Upanishads themselves declare that truth is beyond description, still this truth can be realized in this world itself. The great commentator Shankaracharya, who explained the meaning of 10 Upanishads, Isha Ekena, Kataprashna, Mundamandukya, Taittiriya, Aitareya, Chandogya, Brihadaranyaka. There are 10 important Upanishads which Shankaracharya commented upon. He says that the study of Upanishads help us to destroy ignorance, avidya. And the study takes us near the supreme goal, near the supreme truth. And it also helps us to come out of the cycle of life, death and rebirth, which is called samsara in the Upanishadic language. According to Vedanta, so long as we live in this world with attachment and selfish desires, we will reap the fruit of our actions, the results of our actions. Whatever we do with a sense of identification, either I am the doer, I am going to enjoy the fruits of this action which I am doing, that action will create a permanent impression in our mind, and depending upon that impression, we will have to be born again and again. And this cycle of actions, enjoyment of action, death, rebirth, and again the continuation of the cycle, it continues. According to Upanishadic cosmology, this rhythmic cycle exists at the macro level and also the micro level. At the macro level, the entire universe is following a rhythmic cycle, which is called in the Vedic language called a rhythm, the invisible, the rhythmic sequence of phenomenal world. The different seasons, the movement of stars, the galaxies, all this. So the Upanishadic cosmology gives a graphic description of the rhythmic cycle of the cosmic phenomena. There is always an inherent, invisible harmony, a sequence behind the apparent chaos that we normally find in this world. Always a sequence. So Masa, Ardhamasa, the Gratavas Samvatsara, the Upanishad language goes on like this. Now, if we observe all this, we find there should be a supreme intelligence which is controlling and regulating this harmonious existence. So in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, there is an interesting dialogue between a great sage of those times, Yajnavalkya, and an equally great sage who was Gargi, one of the most enlightened women of that Upanishadic age. So there the sage explains this reality, Edasya Aksharasya Prashasane Gargi Dhyava Pratibho Vidado Drishtadha, etc. This long description. Then tells Gargi, look at the skies, the mountains, the valleys, the different seasons. Don't you find there is and again the formation of galaxies and suns, different planets. Don't you think there is an order, there is a sequence, there is a harmony behind all these cosmic phenomena? So they all point out to one supreme intelligence who regulates and controls these realities. Similarly, in human life also, there is a rhythmic. That's at the micro level. There's an inherent harmony. In Gita, Sri Krishna tells, Dekhinosmin yatha dekhe kaumaram yavvanam jara tatha dekhantar prapti. Dhiras tatra namukhid. In the second chapter of Gita, I find 13 verse or so. Now, Krishna tells, this body comes and goes. When the body is young, we call it a baby, a boy, a youth, a middle-aged man, an old man, and then vanishes, and again is reborn. Again he becomes a baby, boy, child, and so on. So the cycle continues. But behind this cycle, behind these changes, there is an immanent reality behind. It never changes. It is called Atman. That Atman, as the indweller, as the unchanging reality, it's called Pratyagatman, which is a residing reality in every creature, is called Brahman as the source of the universe. When the same reality when it is looked upon as the transcendental reality and the omnipresent reality, it is called Brahman. And when it is looked upon as the immanent reality, it is called Atman. In the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, there is a famous verse which gives a graphic description basis. It says, I can quote this and I explain in English. Ye prithivyam drishtan prithivyam andrahayam prithivi naveda yasya prithivi shariram ye prithivyah andro yamedi eshataya antaryami amrtaha. There is Yajnavalkya's description. Yajnavalkya says, you can explain in any way you like. Ye prithivyam drishtan. He says, see all these mountains, valleys and trees, all that you find on earth. If you look upon them, if you say this is God, this is the absolute reality, it becomes a kind of pantheism in which we equate God with nature. But that is not what the Upanishads are trying to teach. So the mantra next says, Prithivyam antaraka. It is within all this. Mountains and valleys, all this exist on earth. In fact, there is a spark, there is an expression of that immanent reality in all these cosmic phenomena. But these phenomena do not constitute that reality. It is within that. But then, it is not something which is residing within it. So the Upanishads tell us that entire cosmic phenomena is a vehicle, it's a medium through which this Atman, this Supreme Truth, expresses itself. The entire creation, the entire cosmic phenomena constitute a vehicle, a medium through which this spiritual reality expresses itself. And as the indweller in all these beings, it controls and regulates the entire creation. This is what the Upanishad tells us. At the same time, it is also called the source of the universe. It is also called the power maintains, the power which sustains it, and also the point of dissolution. Now, the greatness of Upanishad philosophy is that it incorporates and it assimilates and reconciles all possible ideas of absolute reality or God. We have, roughly speaking, according to modern theologians and also modern Orientalists, 6 levels of analyzing the supreme reality. The most elementary level is pantheism, in which we equate external nature with God. In fact, that you can find the influence of the pantheistic religion in most of the old religious ideas, spiritual ideas. At the next stage, we go a step beyond it. there is an inherent indweller behind the entire cosmic phenomena. In the Vedas we find, say, Imame Gange Yamune Saraswati, like that there are a number of rivers are mentioned in the Rigveda Samhita. Ganga, Yamuna, Saraswati, Arjikhiya, etc. All these Sushoma, Vidasta, all these rivers are mentioned. So in the Upanishadic tradition, you find certain verses which support the pantheistic idea. But again, there are certain verses which tell us, well, the reality is beyond this. It is the inherent reality behind all this. Pantheism is called. Then in the Vedic literature, there are many verses in which you find one supreme reality is projected. If those who are familiar with Vedic literature, so today I was chanting Narayana Sukta, many such suktas you find. There one particular deity is extolled as very much like the monotheistic religions. And then in some other verses, when Supreme God is projected, just like established, organized monotheistic religions. And above all this, there is the highest understanding, the highest perception of the supreme reality, where the Upanishads and Vedic mantras tell us the reality is one, there is unity of goal, but paths are many. In fact, this is the most singular aspect of the Upanishadic philosophy. Reality is one, but paths are many. Indram Mitram Varunam Agnirahu Atho Divyasa Suparna Gurutman Ekam Sat Vipra Bhagutha Vadandi Agnim Yamam Matarishwanama. It comes in the Rigveda Samhita. So it gives a long list of different deities whom the Vedic Aryans were worshipping in Vedic times. Then says, and this is something which is found in only in Vedantic tradition, Ekam Sat, the reality is one. But then wise men call it by different names. Sat Vipraha Bhagutha Vadanti. So if reality is one, then there could be any number of paths through which we can approach the reality. This unique message which Swamiji brought to America is based on the teachings of Upanishads. That's why Swamiji repeats again and again, I have taught nothing but the Upanishads. In fact, this is the central message of Upanishads. The unity of goal and the diversity of means to attain that goal. In some other Vedic texts, this is given in a this description is given in a very, very graphic style. I can explain that it becomes very clear. It says, now, suppose there are a number of rivers which are flowing to the same ocean. Now, the water which flows to the ocean, when the water reaches the ocean, they lose their identity. So, the Yatha Nadyas Yandamana Samudre Astam Gecchandi Namarupe Vikaya Tatha Vidwan Namarupa Vimuktaha Paratparam Purusham Upayedi Divyam. It comes in the Rigveda Samhita, and ironically it comes in Mundaka Upanishad, which is actually from Atharvaveda. So the idea is this. Now, I don't know about the different directions of rivers in the United States, but I have to go back to an Indian context. See, Ganga, Yamuna, all these rivers are flowing in one direction, towards Bay of the ocean. Now, when that water reaches the ocean, that water which has reached the ocean loses its identity as a separate river. It becomes merged with the ocean. Similarly, when a man reaches the highest level of spiritual experience, then he experiences it. And then he understands that unity of goal and diversity of means is the scheme of all human efforts to understand the supreme reality. So any path is acceptable. And this idea is given in another interpretation in Gita and Mahabharata and other books. There are a number of dialogues in which this idea is projected. In one context, in the Bhagavata Purana, it gives the characteristics of 3 types of spiritual seekers, 3 types of devotees. In fact, these 3 types of devotees belong to 3 levels of spiritual evolution. The lowest type of devotees is called Prakrita Bhakta. Prakrita Bhakta means the one who has just begun his spiritual journey. He goes to a place of worship. He mechanically follows certain rituals. He has devotion to God, but he has no concern for people living around him. So, archayam eva hare pujam cha saddhaye khade nachata bhakteshu cha anyeshu sabhakta praguda smrtha. The meaning of this verse is this. A beginner in spiritual life thinks that spiritual life consists of following certain mechanical practices, doing japa, doing meditation, going to a place of worship, etc. Upanishads fully agree with this view. This is very much necessary for spiritual seekers. But there is a higher level. As you go on evolving spiritual life, at the next stage, we realize that God is present outside a place of worship also. In fact, this is the fundamental distinction of the Upanishadic message. Upanishads constitute the only religious scriptures which have the boldness to tell us that God can be attained even outside a place of worship. That's the message of Vedanta. So at the second stage, as a man progresses in spiritual life, he loves the devotees of God, he has devotion to God, and at the same time, to those who don't know much about God, he has compassion for him, and those who try to distract his attention from God, he keeps a distance from them. It's a very interesting analysis. He says, that is, Ishwari tad adhineshu balisheshu dishutsucha prema maitri kripo beksha yakaro disamadhimaha. The translation is very simple. There is a higher level of devotee. He is devoted to God. And he has compassion to God's devotees, other devotees. And he has got sympathy for those who don't know much about God, who may not be interested in spiritual life. They will try, through their contact, they try to bring them to spiritual life. But at the same time, he keeps himself away from those who may distract his mind and drag his mind away from spiritual life. This is the second stage. And then this text gives a graphic description of a devotee of the highest type who has realized the essence of Upanishadic message. There it says, Yastu sarvani bhudani atmanevanu pasyati sarva bhudastu chatmanam tatona vijugupsati. It's a very famous one. That is in the Ishavasya Upanishad. And in the devotional text, it says, the one who can see the presence of God in every living being in this world, and one who can see in God the entire creation. So, if one can see the entire humanity, the whole creation in God, and if we can experience an expression of the divinity of God in all living beings, he can never hate anybody. He feels a kind of a sense of fraternity, friendliness, compassion, and love for the entire creation. So the greatness of Upanishads is that On the one hand, it contains the highest metaphysical wisdom, the highest metaphysical flights of spiritual philosophy. On the other hand, it is extremely humanistic. And in modern times, great exponents like Swami Vivekananda have given a very humanistic, pragmatic interpretation of Upanishadic wisdom. Swamiji's central thesis was this. Upanishads tell us that creation is one. The entire humanity is one spiritual family. So, anyone who has got sincerity, honesty, purity of mind, love for his fellow beings can reach God. No matter whether he believes in a particular religion or not. Even for those who don't believe in a God can realize the absolute spiritual realization mentioned in Upanishads. That's the greatness. If you just think of how Sri Ramakrishna welcomed and taught different types of disciples who used to flock to his room in Dakshineshwar. There were great spiritual personalities like the direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, Swamiji, Drakhal Maharaj, and other great monastic disciples, and also great householder disciples like Yam, Nagamahase, and others. They were all great saints and sages of those days. And also there were people who did not believe in any God. They were even agnostics, and they were atheists also. They were also welcomed by Sri Ramakrishna. In fact, Sri Ramakrishna in a way embodies the essence of Upanishadic wisdom in its completeness, and perhaps he is the greatest representative of the Upanishadic wisdom in modern times. His doors were open to all. There were people with questionable character like Girish Chandra Ghosh, and there were highly exalted spiritual personalities of those days like Keshav Chandra Sen. Though he did not believe in personal God because he was a Brahma Samaj. Brahma Samaj philosophy rules out, it rejects Advaita, the highest reach of spiritual philosophy, and also image worship, the beginning of spiritual life. Both they rejected. But Keshav Chandra Sen perhaps did not even go and bow down before the image of Divine Mother in Dakshineshwar temple. But he was also welcomed by Sri Ramakrishna. Ultimately, he became a great devotee of Mother. So, and there were people who did not believe in any religion or God or anything. So anybody who has got sincerity, honesty and integrity, the doors of spiritual Upanishad wisdom opens its doors before them. So I'm much obliged to all of you for patiently listening to me. Upanishads is a huge branch of spiritual literature. Today we have got no less than 240 Upanishads. Of them, nearly 180 Upanishads are available in the full text, in full form. And of these 180 Upanishads, 10 Upanishads are the most celebrated texts because they were commented upon by the great teacher Shankaracharya. So they constitute, on the one hand, the highest spiritual and metaphysical flights of human thought, and on the other hand, it also embodies the most humanistic approach to a spiritual life. Thank you. My namaskara. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat. Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.